If you are a fan of competitive sports, extreme sports, the world's most popular sport, team sports, or really expensive old boys club dominated by wheats sports, why is it that sports, entire institutions, and industries often get disrupted by a tiny group of friends in unexpected places? For instance, how did a small handful of painters in Paris from 1867 to 1886 blow us all away when they introduced Impressionism? Or what about soccer? You might be surprised to know that Brazil was not always known as the birthplace of the world's best soccer team. How can such a poor nation suddenly produce players with virtuoso soccer abilities like Pelé, Ronaldo, and Neymar? Why did a land of orchards and farmland in Northern California suddenly become Silicon Valley, the world-renowned center of the computer industry? Atari, Apple, and Oracle were all founded there in the 1980s. How could a couple teenage nerds like Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who started Microsoft, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who started Google, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, who started Apple, working out of their garage, disrupt entire industries? Why are 33 of the top 100 female golfers from South Korea? Why do the KIPP charter schools, which started in Houston, Texas, produce at least twice as many students who go on to complete a 4-year graduate degree compared to their low socioeconomic school equivalents? Or what about Dogtown and Z-Boys, the small group of rebellious teenage skaters in Venice Beach who completely revolutionized skateboarding? Or have you heard of the Polgar sisters? Lazlo Polgar declared that he would raise his daughters to become chess prodigies. And then he did exactly that. In 1991, his daughter Judith Polgar achieved the title of Grandmaster at the age of 15 years old, the youngest to have done so at the time, breaking the record previously held by former world champion Bobby Fischer. At one point, the three Polgar sisters were the first, second, and sixth highest-ranking female chess players of the world. Or perhaps you are familiar with Venus and Serena Williams and how their father raised them to become the world's greatest female tennis players. If not, I highly recommend a film titled King Richard. These fathers, painters, athletes, skateboarders, and hackers were all rebels. They were going against the system. We might not think of these paintings as an act of rebellion, but even the French Impressionists were looked down on because they could not get their paintings into the French Academy. This painting style was an FU to the institution. Please excuse my French. In fact, Albert Einstein, the first person that comes to mind as the textbook example of a dictionary-defined genius, was also a rebel. He didn't get along with his professor and could not get work at a university until long after he had published 4 groundbreaking articles. He was a lowly paid patent clerk at the time when he revolutionized physics. Artists, entrepreneurs, and creatives who change the world often have this personality trait in common. They do not do well in traditional school. Even Mark Twain said, "I have never let my schooling interfere with my education." Luckily, it didn't stop him from creating the 2 most infamous literary teenage American outsiders, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. So what was it about these small groups of rebels from these unexpected places that allowed them to achieve world-changing mastery? That's the question that Daniel Coyle set out to answer in his book, The Talent Code. Greatness isn't born, it's grown. Here's how. Now, I'm not going to break down the entire book, but a key takeaway is that you do not have to be born genius, and you do not have to be born in the right place at the right time. In fact, perhaps you could make the place where you are the home of the next upstart. Now, there is a way to achieve mastery if you want to do it, and it is not too late to start. This is part 3 of a video series we call the Fun Ivy League Admissions Strategy. In the first part, titled Gain Admission to Great Schools by Spending Less Hours in High School, we learned that the first major step is to develop a deep interest by doing a lot of reading, and the importance of an innovative, sloganable project. In part 2, we discussed the second step, which is to turn a small side project into an epic achievement. Now, this requires you gain access to a closed community and roll up a solution into a bigger and bigger, innovative, sloganable Saturday morning project. To learn more, I suggest you go back and watch those 2 videos first. In this final video of the series, we are going to tackle the 3rd and final step of our fun Ivy League admissions strategy, using everything I've learned from the following books: Cal Newport's book on how to become a high school superstar, Mastery by Robert Greene, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, Bringing Up Greatness by Lazlo Polgar, and The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle. As you can see, I did a good bit of research for this video series. I read books like Amazon brings boxes. I always deliver. So if you, like me, are not afraid of a little light reading, then I recommend you read all of these books as well. But if, like most people, you know how to read and just prefer not to, I've condensed all my research into a well-edited, entertaining breakdown filled with graphic delights. So, let's figure out how to achieve mastery of a unique skill. Find a way to make yourself useful to experts and professionals in your field, and earn their trust. Interview them to find out what actually works as opposed to what people think works. Learn from their expertise. This idea is a cornerstone of Cal Newport's arguments in his book on how to become a high school superstar, and his follow-up book, How to Become a Straight-A Student, the unconventional strategies real college students use to score high while studying less. It's also encouraged by the Acton Academy, which its founder, Jeff Sandifer, explained when interviewed by Jordan Peterson. To do great work, you need to associate with a master who does great work. Nearly all of the well-known masters of any field worked under a mentor for nearly 10 years, as Robert Greene points out in his book titled Mastery. But whether you form a mentor relationship or not, it's critical that you find out from those with experience what the on-the-ground reality is in your desired domain. You'll never break through all of the misconceptions until you seek out the advice of those who actually do the work on a daily basis. Experts can give you just the right advice at the right moment and give you a healthy dose of reality that could transform you from a hopeless dreamer into an inspiring success. As you research and interview these professionals about how they earned their expertise, look for and map out all of these small steps that they took along the way to achieve their great accomplishments. There are often steps along the way to doing great work that surprised even the professional that achieved such great results. For instance, Bill Gates did actually enroll in Stanford, but he never attended the classes that he enrolled in. He made it a point to only attend classes he had not enrolled in, while still managing to pass many of the classes that he had paid tuition for but never attended. Another example is Ben Franklin. He eventually became famous due to some of his great writings. He founded a newspaper in Philadelphia and published Poor Richard's Almanac, which would be the equivalent of today's most popular newsletter. So how did he become such a great writer? He would copy great writers and try to write in their style, while working for his older brother's newspaper. Because he was only 16 at the time while working for his older brother's newspaper, his older brother would not print Ben's work. So to get his work published, Ben sent really entertaining letters to his brother's newspaper, working secretly under the pseudonym Silence Dogood, pretending to be a contentious old lady. But the letters were written so well that his older brother began publishing the letters, which is how Ben became a published author at 16 years old. If you find anything that is counterintuitive or surprising in your research during your interviews of professionals, or as you yourself try to learn the skill, then it will give you something interesting to talk about in your college admission essays. Bold, counterintuitive statements also make for catchy headlines if you are trying to build an audience. Athletes, homeschoolers, half-schoolers all spend less time in school and less time doing schoolwork. And there's no reason why you shouldn't also. Cal Newport goes so far as to encourage you to drop all but your most interesting electives and extracurricular activities. Why? Because that's what it takes to go all in for one deep interest. Now, I cannot speak for other countries, but in America, public schools are bad and getting worse. When I was a high school teacher, I rarely had more than 20 students per class. But now when I speak to new teachers in 2024, they rarely have classes less than 30 students. There's now a shortage of teachers and a lack of funding to pay for them. To solve this problem, schools in the Midwest are literally just canceling school on Fridays. Sure, that won't fix the problem. According to the Pew Research Center, America still does not rank highly internationally on science, math, and reading, and have done poorly for decades. All this despite the fact that we spend more. In fact, the government pays $16,000 per year per student each year. Most parents didn't think much about this until the students were forced to learn from home during the COVID pandemic. Then they saw firsthand how bad schools are at teaching. The reality is, most of the day in public school isn't spent learning. A huge portion of it is just logistics. Switching classes 8 times a day, taking attendance, getting from point A to point B through a hallway filled with students who are lost. All of this is pointless and does not result in real learning. For the athletes and scholars and anyone who really takes their schedule seriously, they and their coaches know that you can learn just as much as a typical student in half the time. That's why athletes get special arrangements for their schedule so that they can learn just as much, but only attend half as many classes. Coaches often help their best athletes to escape the wasted class time by having their best high school students attend college courses instead. This allows them the time they need to train for their particular sport. If you do not have a coach to advocate for you, then advocate for yourself. Get your parents to visit the school counselor, or simply do it yourself if you are a good negotiator. Homeschool students can take vacations anytime they like, and often learn more than public school students in half the time. They choose what, when, and how they want to learn, so they are both more motivated and more effective learners. This also makes them more effective college students, where the professors will fail you if you don't do the work to study on your own. As a matter of fact, I would argue that homeschool is a far better option for any student who can manage it than the public school alternative, but that's a subject for another video. But at the very least, you should work out a deal with your counselor to get out of school earlier in the day. You can take less classes, drop some of your electives, and test out of some critical classes. Perhaps you could work out a deal with a school that allows you to take a college course during school hours related to your deep interest and/or innovative sloganable project, as we discussed in part 2 of this series. Work together with the school to make a plan for getting you into your top-ranked university. Send them a link to this video if you want, and let me explain it to them on your behalf. This is critical because you are going to need time to pursue your deep interest if you are going to pull off an epic project and have a story worth writing about in your admissions essays. Give yourself time to wander and explore. Now, I did not mean to get into another rant about the problems of public school, but the key thing is to realize that to do great work, you must make time to follow your curiosity and make your own path. Time wasted following your own path is time well spent, which might seem counter to the way it feels. While it feels like a fun waste of time, technically speaking, you need to feed your brain supercomputer a lot of related and unrelated inputs, and then let those ideas synthesize. Only then can your brain form new connections never thought of before. You have to learn everything that is already known about your special interest. Know what is currently possible, and explore just a little beyond that to find the next big thing, the adjacent possible. This is real, unstructured learning. It may not feel very efficient because it is not. It hardly even seems like learning at all because really it's a form of play. Exploring your curiosity and discovering something new is fun. It's the ultimate form of diversion. For those of you who consider yourselves easily distracted, this is where you will most shine. Follow your distraction. Follow the white rabbit down the internet rabbit hole, like Alice in Wonderland. Take a trip to some place very few have ever seen. Discover new frontiers where no student has gone before. This cannot be done on a strict, regimented schedule. If you are the type who is extraordinarily organized and keeps a really tight schedule and feels like you are being irresponsible if you aren't busy and productive every hour of the day, this might be very challenging for you. To discover something new, you not only need to consume a lot of varied information, but you need to take the time to relax and synthesize all of that information. You need to rest, go for long walks out in nature, take naps, and allow your brain to connect the dots. This is literally true. The biological process of learning requires the forming of new synapses between nerve cells and wrapping those connections with fibers called myelin to make those connections more robust and fire more easily. A lack of sleep or an excessive amount of stress will literally make it hard for you to remember anything that you study. It's why a new skill is always so much easier to perform on the second day after you've tried it for the first time and had a full night's rest. It's also why cramming the night before a test instead of sleeping is actually the worst way to prepare for a test, compared to studying a little each day so that you can sleep between learning sessions. In all of us, there are multiple conflicting personality types. There is that part of us that is ambitious and wants to take over the world by achieving as much as possible each and every hour of every day. But there is also the playful part of our personality that wants to be lazy, have some fun, and socialize. These two aspects of our character are at odds with each other. There are those with stronger conscientiousness. If you plan every hour of every day, leaving no room for spontaneity, it may be very productive, but that kind of rigorous routine could make every day feel the same and lacking in variety of the spice of life. It doesn't make you a very fun person to hang out with. On the other hand, there are those with stronger spontaneity. If you only ever give in to the playful side, then the more organized, productive people in your life probably judge you for being lazy. Even if they are too polite to say anything, the people who are always on time are complaining about you while they wait for you, knowing you will show up late if you show up at all. But don't worry. Whether you are one extreme or the other, or both like I am, there is a solution that I find works perfectly. If you are really into schedule optimization, then optimize half of your day, keeping a tight schedule so that you can make as much time as possible for adventures of exploration for the rest of the day. If you are not very organized, figure out which part of the day you are at your best and try to do the hard stuff during that part of the day. For me personally, as a morning person, I keep a very regimented, stacked schedule during the first half of the day. Starting from 4 a.m., I pray, plan, write, produce videos, study foreign language, handle administrative tasks, exercise, read, and do everything that requires intense concentration in 90-minute sprints during the first half of the day. In between these work sessions, I'd take walks and visit the kitchen for a snack. I also track the way I spend these hours so that I can accurately predict how long it will take me to complete big projects. If you're not the conscientious type and don't like being so organized, then my schedule may look very restricting to you. I'll admit I am a little extreme, even compared to the most organized among us, so maybe you don't need to be this insane about tracking your hours. But it works for me, and it helps me to relieve all of the pressure I put on myself. It also gives me the freedom to spend the later part of my day very loosely without my productive side feeling guilty. Then I have the rest of the day to have fun playing, researching, and trying something new. I take long walks, watch movies, socialize with family and friends. This may not look like work, but this form of unstructured learning is what allows me to synthesize everything I learned that day and allows me to work so hard the next morning. Exploration and wonder rarely produces more than mediocre results, but occasionally you discover something so amazing that it produces extraordinary results. It's how theoretical physicists were able to discover the power of the atom. It's how Einstein discovered both relativity and special relativity, which changed physics forever. You may be more of an artist than an Einstein, but you'll never know if you have something unique and interesting to offer unless you pursue your own unique curiosity. Even if you have ambitions to take over the world or become one of the richest men ever, if you actually read about Bezos, Elon Musk, or Bill Gates, which of course I have because I love biographies and reading, and just in case you haven't noticed by now, I love being able to brag about reading. If you are not afraid of a little light reading, you'll find that all three of them make time for exploration. Bill Gates regularly takes a large amount of books and retreats to a cabin in the woods for 2 weeks at a time. He goes completely off-grid to make time for exploring a subject deeply, reading everything he can about it, and reflects on what he learned. Elon Musk is a world-class gamer and claims that there is hardly a war in all of history that he hasn't read and studied about. The driving force of his world-saving mission was initially inspired by his favorite science fiction novels. Games, sci-fi, and reading random books about history could all be judged as a waste of time. But it is a critical part of what makes Elon Musk such a great strategist. As he said in Walter Isaacson's biography, "I was wired for war." Bezos, the founder of Amazon.com, makes it a top priority to get 8 hours of sleep, and one of the books about him is literally titled Invent and Wonder. Number 3. Set aside your best time for deliberate practice. New York Times bestsellers Malcolm Gladwell in his book titled Outliers and Robert Greene in his book titled Mastery also wrote about this. I've read and researched all of these books, and they all agree that to achieve mastery, you will have to dedicate a lot of time to deliberate practice, also known as deep practice. Deliberate practice is not just repeating the same behavior over and over again, but it's a method that requires chunking, which is breaking techniques down into their various different components. Repetition. Targeted repetition of skills at the edge of your ability, doing what is most difficult, not what is most comfortable. And learning to feel it, what Robert Greene refers to as fingertip feel for your area of expertise. One form of deliberate practice that artists, athletes, and innovators all use is to make time for studying the masters of their craft. Just as athletes like Kobe Bryant used to watch and rewatch tapes of Michael Jordan playing basketball, just as artists study the techniques of other artists, and just as today's filmmakers study the films of Steven Spielberg and Alfred Hitchcock, it's important to break down, imitate, and master the techniques employed by those who came before. Mentors. It's also common to see a 10-year period in which an aspiring talent works under a mentor. Leonardo da Vinci, for example, worked as an apprentice in Verrocchio's workshop. This was explained in detail by both Robert Greene in his book Mastery and Walter Isaacson in his biography about Leonardo da Vinci. This is a period of time in which a craftsman can hone their craft while being surrounded by inspiration and receive suggestions from a critical coach. But unlike you might think, mentors don't actually explain that much or interfere as much as you would expect. They aren't giving epic, fiery speeches like you see in your favorite sports films. Coaching and constant critical correction works great in a kind learning environment. Tennis, chess, and learning to play an instrument all fall into the category of kind learning environments. A kind learning environment is any kind of situation that has a very clear set of rules and a very clear right way and wrong way to do things. Chess follows a very tight set of rules. In any given chess situation, you can learn from many games that were played before to find the appropriate move in that situation. When lifting weights, swinging a tennis racket, a golf club, or playing an instrument, we know exactly what kind of training to do to achieve the proper form and technique. A good coach can help you to master that technique very quickly. It won't give you a competitive advantage, but it is the absolute bare minimum you must do to even attempt to complete. In fact, if it is known how to do something properly, then you are almost guaranteed there will be a lot of competition and professional coaches hoping to make money off of teaching these techniques to newbies. A great coach will give tiny confirmations as a performer perfects their technique, if there is a known way to do it perfectly. But in complicated domains where there are a lot of variables at play, a good coach is more likely to use a hands-off approach. We call this a wicked learning environment. A wicked learning environment, compared to a kind learning environment, is one filled with VUCA. VUCA stands for situations that are volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Don't worry, I know you didn't catch all of that, but you will as we look at examples in more depth. Arts, markets, and collaborations create a wicked learning environment. This is a game, a sport, or a competition in which the feedback you receive might not be informative. It becomes nearly impossible to separate out the various different critical factors. If you lose a game of soccer, did you lose because you didn't pass enough? Due to a weak defense? Was it due to psychological factors, physical ability, or was it any one of the 11 players' faults? When you gain or lose money in the stock market, can you really know why you did well? How can we know if we learned the right lesson or are just fooling ourselves? Markets and games with a lot of players are volatile, changing rapidly, uncertain, filled with unpredictability and at least some randomness, complex, far too many factors to isolate any one variable in any scientific way, and ambiguous, leaving you unsure if you really succeeded or lost. In this kind of environment, direct advice from coaching becomes far less effective. But luckily, that brings us to our fourth way to get an edge on the competition. When you study examples of success, it is clear you need to immerse yourself in an environment of success. Surround yourself with visual cues and images of success. You need to associate with successful peers, exchange inspiring ideas, find mentors and coaches who can help you find your technique, and be constantly exposed to motivating images of success from within your domain. This is one of the reasons why siblings are often able to achieve mastery together. All three of the Bronte sisters each became published authors at a time when women weren't even as educated or thought able to write as well as men. Their books are now thought of as classics. Each of the three Polgar sisters went on to become chess grandmasters in a sport formerly dominated by men, and we all know about Venus and Serena Williams. Just as we say that you are the equivalent of your 5 closest friends, if your 5 closest friends are consumed with passion for achieving mastery of a unique skill, it becomes easy to find the motivation to do the hard work required to master that unique skill. Nobody starts out very good, and these friends might only be a little better than you, but that perfectly qualifies them to become your first audience. They can give you specific feedback on how to improve at a stage when no one else really cares just yet. The other interesting observation that Daniel Coyle made about genius learning environments is that the environment can be impoverished. To reinforce hard work and discipline, it actually helps if the environment is not comfortable or luxurious. In this case, the poor actually have an advantage over the rich. But these students cannot have an impoverished attitude towards success. They need to be constantly reminded that with hard work, they will be successful. Their environment needs to be filled with constant reminders. Their own language should reinforce that idea. And it helps when they imagine that they are working towards a long-term goal. Even short-term goals are reached faster if they are thought of only as stepping stones towards a longer-term goal. When the two groups of students doing the exact same work were compared, students who did the work without a plan to become a professional didn't accomplish as much as given the same short amount of time as the students who were working towards a longer-term goal. You will also see that ultimately successful students eventually become obsessed with making progress. Through small wins and reinforcements of various kinds, they develop an internal motivation that drives them. And it is this drive that gives them confidence, long before they have any real confidence. It requires faith. It means skill does not come before confidence. The confidence comes first, then the skill. These young people learn to absolutely believe in themselves, despite what others say about them. So as a parent or a coach, it is important to surround them with cues that support the idea that they will be successful. If nothing else, because of their determination to do the deliberate work. Competence is not arrogance. These students could be seen as arrogant by lesser peers, and those same peers, driven by jealousy, will say ugly things to them to their face and about them behind their backs. This is why the social environment is so critical. Peers with a terrible attitude will drag them down, but peers they can compete with will compel them to work even harder. Another unique aspect of all these communities is they all find an innovative way to speed up the feedback process through some sort of faster training simulation. Brazilian soccer players didn't just master big field soccer. Brazil is the birthplace of futsal, a smaller indoor style of soccer that is a much faster, non-stop, tighter game that requires intense footwork. Because it is so much faster and more intense, it creates players with far more control over the ball in a big field soccer game. Open source collaborations. For those who want to learn real programming skills, I recommend volunteering for open source projects. For programmers, game designers, and developers, there are short online collaborations called game jams and hackathons. These are usually over the weekend or over the course of a week. Game school. I actually hold game jams over the course of 3 weeks where high schoolers, even those with no experience designing games, form teams of artists, writers, and coders. Using Python programming and free art programs, they are able to produce a playable demo prototype for the opening scene to their very own original video game. On the last day of the class, they all watch as other teams play their game, almost like a student film festival. It's a ton of fun, and the students who have never programmed before can learn the most fundamental basics. This is also the reason why I advocate for game-based learning in education. Strategy games and simulations allow students to receive immediate feedback and find challenges perfectly matching their skill level. And it allows them to play, making deliberate practice fun and meaningful in a way that traditional learning can never match. Of course, not all games are educational, but mine are. Now, in the past, you had to go to the city where the new underground movement was taking place, whether that meant growing up in or moving to Silicon Valley to catch the technological revolution, growing up in Brazil or Spain if you wanted to play soccer, or growing up as a girl in South Korea to play golf. But maybe you're like me and didn't want to have to live in Burbank, California in order to fulfill your dream of becoming an animator, to work in television animation. Now, thanks to the internet, it is possible to be part of a new movement without having to live in any specific geographical location. Now we can form our own distributed communities through small social forums online. But I still find it very difficult to find just the right peer group. This year, I am starting a video essay academy for teens and young adults. This community isn't for just anyone, but it is specifically for the innovative young rebels who want to build skills making video essays on YouTube. George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Francis Ford Coppola all attended the USC Film School, back when it and they had absolutely no connections to Hollywood. It's yet another example of a small community that later became very influential. But now that the school is notorious, it is expensive and overrun with filmmaker wannabes. George, Steven, and Francis didn't make it in the industry because of the school. They made their own path at a time when the school couldn't do it for them. They made films despite the fact that they attended film school. So why wait till after you graduate to start making films, when you can start your filmmaking career today? This will be an online community where you can meet on a weekly basis, share and exchange ideas, join collaborative projects, build lifelong relationships with friends who share your passion for learning, and encourage each other by being your friend's first audience. We are going to sort our recruits into 4 different houses: the house of play, the house of beauty, the house of boldness, and the house of brilliance. Now, I know this strategy has a lot of steps, far more than you or I can memorize. And unfortunately, neither I nor Cal Newport was able to fit all of it into a nice, catchy, easy-to-remember acronym. What I did do, though, was design a beautiful Sketchnotes poster which you can download as a high-resolution PDF. To get your free digital copy, simply visit www.bestclassever.org/school. If you, your son, or daughter are interested in joining the Video Essay Academy, one of our game jams, or art club, we will soon begin recruiting. You can register for early access as a student or as a parent on behalf of your son or daughter at bestclassever.org/school. Simply answer a couple questions and we'll email you the free PDF as well as an exclusive invite once seats become available. With that, I hope you will be able to find your path to mastery. If not, we are glad to help at bestclassever.org.